Bonjour et bienvenue à Coffee Break French. Welcome back to Coffee Break French. Now, lesson 41 is the first lesson in this second level of Coffee Break French. And for this lesson, we're going to start by looking at some of the patterns of the language, the grammar, if you like. We're going to begin by looking at the conjugation of a verb in the present tense. You'll learn to conjugate a verb. That means say the different parts of the verb, I, you, he, she, and so on. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to conjugate regular ER verbs in the present tense. I hope that you find this lesson useful.
It's very often the situation when you're learning a language that you find yourself making conversation with people. That might be in the queue for a bus or in a cafe or a restaurant or something like that, or sitting on the beach like we did in lesson 39, I think. When you're making conversation with people, you need to be able to construct the language. And up to this point, it's not really something that we've put a huge amount of emphasis on within Coffee Break French. The idea so far is that we've been learning certain phrases and why these phrases mean what they mean. But now it's time to start to create the language and to construct phrases from what you know. Today we're going to look at a particular question. We're going to look at the question, Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Anna, can you repeat that please? Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Now, fait, the word fait, sounds like a word that we've come across before. Anna, can you remember how you would say, for example, it's warm?
Il fait chaud.
Il fait chaud, très bien. How would you say it's windy?
Il fait du vent.
Il fait du vent. So we've used fait in this construction before. Il fait du vent, il fait chaud, and so on. Literally, although that means it's windy or it's warm, literally it means it does some wind or it does warmth. So if I'm asking you, qu'est-ce que tu fais? The qu'est-ce que part is just the question word what. Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Anna, what am I asking you?
What are you doing?
Exactly. Qu'est-ce que tu fais? What are you doing? Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Now, it could mean, what are you doing at the moment? If you come across someone and they're doing something strange, they mean, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Or it could be used in a more general way. Qu'est-ce que tu fais pendant le week-end? What do you think that would mean?
That would mean, what are you doing at the weekend?
Yeah, it actually would mean more, what do you do at the weekend? In English, we have two ways of saying things. We have multiple ways of saying things. What are you doing would kind of give the impression, what are you doing right at the moment? Or, what do you do generally? For example, during the weekend, or what do you do during the summer holidays, and so on. So, qu'est-ce que tu fais translates both. What are you doing and what do you do? So we're going to learn this question and some answers to this question. And in fact, what we're going to be doing here is looking at introducing some verbs. Now, the whole idea of learning verbs and taking a more grammatical look at things is perhaps off-putting for some learners, but here at Coffee Break French, we want to make sure that we're introducing these in a very gradual and very understandable way. So we already know the idea of qu'est-ce que tu fais and il fait du vent. To say I am doing something, you would say je fais.
Je fais.
Je fais.
Je fais.
And we've already come across the phrase je fais mes devoirs.
Je fais mes devoirs.
Good. Now, your devoirs are the things that you have to do, so it's actually your homework. So, je fais mes devoirs, I am doing my homework. But the je fais part is I am doing, or I do. Linked to qu'est-ce que tu fais, what are you doing, or what do you do? So I would say je fais.
Je fais.
To say you do, you would say tu fais.
Tu fais.
Okay? So that's tu fais for you do or you are doing, and je fais for I do or I am doing. Let's talk on a general level here and think about the question, qu'est-ce que tu fais pendant le week-end? Anna, what does the question mean?
What do you do at the weekend?
Okay, let's imagine we are chatting to someone in a bar or in a cafe or on the beach or wherever, and we're asked the question, what do you do at the weekend on a general level? Let's learn some possible answers to this, and we're going to be learning these using regular verbs. So one answer could be, I watch the television. You would say, je regarde la télévision.
Je regarde la télévision.
Okay, listen carefully to that, regarde.
Regarde.
Okay, so that's I watch. It comes from the verb regarder, and that's the infinitive. We've already come across the concept of an infinitive, the part that you find in the dictionary. But the conjugated part, the part that refers to I in this situation, is je regarde.
Je regarde.
Let's imagine now that you dance at the weekend, perhaps. You would say, je danse.
Je danse.
Okay, and that comes from the infinitive danser. So, je danse.
Je danse.
And perhaps you sing. You would say, je chante.
Je chante.
That comes from the infinitive chanter.
Chanter.
So we have chanter, giving je chante.
Je chante.
Danser, giving je danse.
Je danse.
Regarder, giving je regarde.
Je regarde.
Now, you might think that we seem to have taken a step back here in simplicity because these do seem very simple in comparison to some of the things that we've already covered in Coffee Break French. However, at this point, we're really going back to the basics and learning how to construct these particular phrases and why they are the way they are. So the infinitive ends in ER in these cases, danser, regarder, chanter. And to form the je part, the I part, you take off that ER and add the letter E. Now, you might be thinking, okay, why did we take off E and R and then add an E back on? But that will make sense as we begin to fill out the verb and look at all the different parts of the verb. So far we've had je regarde,
Je regarde.
je danse,
Je danse.
je chante.
Je chante.
Anna, can you remember how you would say I work?
Je travaille.
Très bien, je travaille. Okay, again, ending in E. Okay, it's quite difficult sometimes to guess exactly how French words are spelled because obviously so many of the letters are silent. Je travaille is spelled T-R-A-V-A-I-L-L-E. Okay, coming from the infinitive travailler, ending in E-R. Let's just test some of these just now before we move on. Anna, I'm going to ask you qu'est-ce que tu fais pendant le week-end, and then I'll give you some prompts. So, for example, qu'est-ce que tu fais pendant le week-end? How would you say, I work in the garden?
Je travaille dans le jardin.
Très bien, je travaille dans le jardin. Okay. How would you say, I sing with my friends?
Je chante avec mes copains.
Très bien, je chante avec mes copains. Or you could have said, je chante avec mes amis. How would you say, I watch the television?
Je regarde la télévision.
Je regarde la télévision. You could also say, je regarde la télé.
Je regarde la télé.
Okay, now in each case, Anna's using je, regarde, danse, chante, and so on. The je part of the verb. If I want to use the tu part of the verb and ask Anna, do you sing with your friends during the weekend? Listen to how this works. Tu chantes avec tes copains pendant le week-end?
Tu chantes avec tes copains pendant le week-end?
Now, listen carefully to the different forms of the verb. Je chante.
Je chante.
Tu chantes.
Tu chantes.
Is there any difference there?
No.
None at all. Now, there's no difference in how it sounds. However, when it's written, as always, there are these silent letters in French. So when it's written, it's actually spelled with an ES at the end, in the tu form. So whereas it's je chante, which would be CHANTE, tu chantes would be CHANTES. Tu chantes.
Tu chantes.
But it sounds identical to je chante.
Je chante.
Okay, now let's take regarder. It would be je regarde.
Je regarde.
And tu regardes.
Tu regardes.
Sounds exactly the same, but it's got an ES at the end. And let's take je travaille.
Je travaille.
And tu travailles.
Tu travailles.
Again, it's got an ES at the end in tu travailles. TRAVAILLES. Tu travailles.
Tu travailles.
So Anna, how would I ask you the question, do you work during the weekend?
You would say, tu travailles pendant le week-end?
Tu travailles pendant le week-end. And how would travail be spelled?
TRAVAILLES.
Excellent. Très bien. Okay. So far we've seen that there is a different form for the tu and the je parts of the verb. But in actual fact, there are different forms for all the different people who might do a particular verb. So taking, for example, the verb chanter, meaning to sing, there are different parts of the verb. The endings change depending on who it is that's doing the singing. So we already know it's je chante.
Je chante.
Tu chantes.
Tu chantes.
To say he sings, you would say il chante.
Il chante.
Now, does that sound familiar?
It certainly does.
Yeah, it sounds exactly the same as the je and the tu form. Now, we learned that je chante is spelled CHANTE. The ending is E, so we take off the ER and add E. For the tu form, we take off the ER and add, what do we add for the tu form, Anna?
ES.
ES, okay. And for the il form, the he form, we take off the ER and add E again. So that's the same as the je form, at least for the verb chanter. So, je chante, I ending, tu chantes, ES, and il chante, I. Go through those, please. Je chante, tu chantes, il chante.
Je chante, tu chantes, il chante.
Okay. Now, if he sings is il chante, to talk about she, we say elle chante.
Elle chante.
So we can add that in. Je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante.
Je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante.
And then we change things slightly because the verb's endings will actually now begin to sound different. To say we sing, we say nous chantons.
Nous chantons.
And that's actually quite a good one. We've both got the cold today, so it sounds quite nasal anyway. But it should be nasal, but you've got to be careful with those sounds because while you might think they sound very similar, there are actually two different sounds there. Nous chantons.
Nous chantons.
So basically what you're doing is putting that second sound further forward in your mouth. It's chantons.
Chantons.
Yeah, stick your lips forward as you're doing the on part. On.
On.
As opposed to en.
En.
So we've got chantons.
Chantons.
This must sound very strange. It looks very strange as we're both recording this. I'm glad it's not a video podcast. Anyway, so that's the nous part. Nous chantons.
Nous chantons.
And it means we sing. Okay? Now, the next part in the verb we're going to look at is vous. And vous means you sing when you're talking to lots of people. Vous chantez.
Vous chantez.
Vous chantez.
Vous chantez.
And then we come to the they part of the verb. So this would be how we would say they sing. Ils chantent.
Il chante.
Does that sound familiar?
Yes, it does.
It sounds exactly like he sings. Okay, so il chante can mean he sings, but it also means they sing, but it's spelt differently. So we've got il in the plural, I-L-S, il.
Il.
But the S is silent unless it's followed by a vowel. Il chante.
Il chante.
Now, this is a guessing game because there is no way, unless you're familiar with this, how you would ever know that chante is actually spelt C-H-A-N-T-E-N-T. It's completely random. Well, it's actually not completely random. It comes from Latin endings and it's disappeared in the history of the French language, but there's not really time to go into that just now. But that's the they ending. It just sounds the same as the he ending. When it's written down, however, it's spelt E-N-T at the end. You take off the E-R and add E-N-T. Now, il chante, I-L-S, C-H-A-N-T-E-N-T, means they sing. However, it's used specifically for either a group of males or a group of males and females together. Il chante. If you've got females only together and you want to sing and you want to say they sing, then you would say elle chante.
Elle chante.
Again, it sounds exactly the same as she sings. However, as you've probably guessed by now, the elle chante would have an S on the end of elle and an ENT on the end of chante. So it would be E-L-L-E-S-C-H-A-N-T-E-N-T. Elle chante.
Elle chante.
Okay, let's go through the whole of this verb. We're going to conjugate the verb now. So starting with je chante.
Je chante.
Tu chantes.
Tu chantes.
Il chante.
Il chante.
Elle chante.
Elle chante.
Nous chantons.
Nous chantons.
Vous chantez.
Vous chantez.
Il chante.
Il chante.
Elle chante.
Elle chante.
Now, you might be wondering what all of this has got to do with qu'est-ce que tu fais pendant le week-end? Well, what we're trying to do here is build your knowledge of verbs, actually help you learn to conjugate verbs so that you can't just talk about what I do at the weekend, but what we do at the weekend, or indeed ask questions, what do they do at the weekend, or what does he do at the weekend, and so on. It's all about trying to build your range of language, the range of expression that you have available to you for coping with these situations. So we've looked at chanter. Let's run through the conjugation of chanter again. Je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante.
Je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante.
Nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante, elle chante.
Nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante, elle chante.
The good thing about this is that this is following a pattern, and it's a pattern that is repeated hundreds, indeed probably thousands of times in the French language, because chanter is what's known as a regular ER verb. And there are literally hundreds of regular ER verbs in French, and we've already covered a few of them today. Regarder, for example, to watch. Travailler, which meant, Anna?
To work.
Danser.
To dance.
And so on. So let's take danser and let's conjugate danser. The je part would be je.
Danse.
Yeah. Tu.
Danse.
What's the ending there?
IS.
Yeah. Il.
Danse.
Ending.
I.
And elle.
Danse.
Ending.
I.
Exactly. So je danse, tu danses, il danse, elle danse. How would you say we dance?
Nous dansons.
Nous dansons. You plural dance.
Vous dansez.
Vous dansez. And then they, talking about males, dance.
Ils dansent.
And they, talking about females, dance.
elle danse.
And what's your ending on the they form?
INT.
Absolutely. So, je danse, tu danses, il danse, elle danse, nous dansons, vous dansez, il danse, elle danse.
Je danse, tu danses, il danse, elle danse, nous dansons, vous dansez, il danse, elle danse.
Très bien. Let's take travailler. Je travaille, tu travailles, il travaille, elle travaille.
Je travaille, tu travailles, il travaille, elle travaille.
Can you continue that, Anna?
I think I can. Okay, here goes. Nous travaillons, vous travaillez, il travaille, elle travaille.
Exactly. And the il travaille, I-L-S for the they, and travail ending in E-N-T. And the same with elle, L-E-L-L-E-S, travail ending in E-N-T. Okay, excellent. Now, one thing I'd like to point out here, and that's the fact that, of course, nous dansons, for example, means we dance, as in nous dansons pendant le week-end, we dance during the weekend, but it also means nous dansons, we are dancing, as in at the moment, we are dancing. Nous dansons.
Nous dansons.
So it's got two translations. Similarly, il travaille would mean he is working, as in at the moment he is working, but it would also mean he works. So, il travaille dans un café. He works in a café.
And that's where we're going to leave it today for this edition of Coffee Break French. Thanks for joining us, and we hope it's been useful. You can join the Coffee Break French community on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeebreakfrench, and we're at Learn French on Twitter. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt. This is a production of the Radiolingua Network. Find out more at radiolingua.com.